Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a truly long dead reality? That's right, this is the TLDR podcast. My name is Daniel, and I've got across the table from me Jefferson. How you doing today, Jeff?
I'm alright.
Sound a little strangled over there. Everything okay?
There's mucus and syrup everywhere.
Oh. That's a great visual. What a way to start the podcast.
Yay!
We're just going to trek right along here. So, my goodness, I am super excited for today's episode. I'm usually excited for the episodes that we're going to do, but I think that this is the one that has got me the most excited so far out of all of them. What do you think?
I think you should expand your vocabulary beyond excited.
Well, I have to... I'm like a newspaper. I have to speak to like a grade 2 reading level or something.
Oh, I see. No, it's gonna be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be a rather although we're both super excited for the episode, I think it's going to be rather polarized where our interests lie.
Oh my goodness, that was scary. I just about lost all of my notes, but managed to pull them back up. This would have been a very empty episode with just Jefferson talking otherwise, so... so I believe I was going to go into Elder Scrolls Blades. Was that where I left off?
Sure.
Had I mentioned that yet?
No, I thought you were going to toss it to me for my history of this week.
Oh. Well, let's do it then. Let's. I was going to ask you what you had gotten done this week.
Why is that funny?
Never mind. Just go.
All right. So I've been doing the usual of that's the new phrasing. Usual.
So that's what the kids say these days.
That's right. No, I've been playing World of Warcraft and Chrono Trigger. And I played a few AR games on my phone in anticipation for this episode. I won't get into the AR games now. I'll talk to them when we talk to those when we do the segment. But I did. I've been busy this week. But I did maybe 5 hours of Chrono Trigger this week, and then I did. A lot more alt playing on World of Warcraft. I have 2 level 20s now, and my level 52 mage who's eternally shelved. Because what happened with my mage is I logged in one day and I killed one mob, and then I got the bright idea to respec her. And I spent my money to respec her, to fire. I went out, tried to kill something, and it was like 3 times harder. And I was like,
oh no.
Man, and I was broke suddenly. So I need to use my fire spec to get money back, but fire spec is not great for soloing mobs.
No, that's the rating spec, isn't it?
No, it's not. Because Molten Core, they're all immune to fire. Blackwing Lair, they're all resistant to fire.
Fair enough.
But so I switched to fire, and I borked myself. So now I'm playing my paladin and trying to make money on my paladin because I know my level 40 mount is practically free. So I'm just gonna, work towards that, and then hopefully have some money saved up so I can respec my mage and make her competent again.
How much was that first respec cost?
1 gold.
1 gold. 1 gold, and you're out of money?
No, that was my third respec. It was 15 gold.
Oh. Okay, well, that I can see, because you're fresh off the heels of buying your mount, correct?
Well, no, that was at 40. I think I got my mount at 41 or 42.
Okay.
You make quite a... After 40, like, gray items and stuff sell at the vendor for like a gold or 2, so...
Oh, really?
It's not that hard to make money. It's just much harder to kill mobs, I've found.
Yeah, okay.
So... Yeah, it's great. I have my level 20 paladin who is a tank. I just did Dead Mines with our friends yesterday, and it was different because I have no way of getting mana back. So as a paladin tank, I have to drink after every pull, which is very strange to me. I'm not used to that, especially in retail, where like even though paladins use mana, it's not really a resource you have to ever worry about. And yeah, it was interesting. My survivability was fine because I'm decked out to the nines. I bought all these blue items when they were still really, really cheap at the beginning of Classic. So I was able to get just a full set of really awesome gear. I even have some epics waiting for later on that I was able to buy for like 2 or 3 gold because people were just so broke at the time.
Holy.
Yeah, so I cashed in on that. So my paladin has up until like level 40, like totally set for himself. And then I have a hunter that I've been playing with Braden. I think I mentioned this last week. It's a hunter warlock combo, and that's hunter is so incredibly high maintenance. It's like it's an easy class to play. Your pet is awesome, especially like right now I'm beast mastery, so my pet is like even better than awesome, and it has, even though it's a DPS pet, he has no trouble holding threat. He's very, very tough. He also does a lot of damage. Like there's no downside to it, except that the hunter has ammunition and they have to have food and water. And there's, if you're doing any kind of professions, there's all of that you have to worry about. So it's a big headache every time I log in because I'm like, okay, I have no inventory space ever, and I need to go into a dungeon suddenly. So it's like you have to like just somehow make the space work. And then I started a druid who's only like level 3 right now, but I want to catch it up to our friend Jeffrey's druid, who's like his druid's like level 22, but it's like a feral tank DPS cat sort of spec. So I want to do like a resto or a moonkin or some sort of spec like that to work opposite his. But I have to catch up to him first, so that'll take a little while. But World of Warcraft has, by and large, been like I thought by now my addiction to the game would be like slowly like petering off. It's not. It's, if anything, it's getting stronger. Every time I get home, I'm like, oh sweet, I can go play the Hunter Warlock combo. Where it's much better playing this game with friends. And even though you like to min max, it's our friend Braden has weird little eccentricities about him that makes it much more interesting to play the game.
Yeah, he's fun. He's a fun guy to play with for sure.
Yes. And I'm sure he'll listen to this and hopefully not take offense. Because I have a long history of losing my temper for no reason.
Yeah, no, I meant it as no offense either. Braden's a lot of fun because he does make a couple derpy mistakes usually, but he also gets all of my Trogdor jokes and stuff. So
that's right.
It's nice to have a like-minded person there with me.
It's a give-take relationship.
We're running through like these Trog camps, and I'm playing with Jefferson and our friend Jeffrey and our friend Braden as a 4-man team, and they're like, "Go check this thing out. Go check out this thing by the Trog hut." And I said to everybody in the Discord, I'm like, do you know how I know it's a Trog hut? Because it has a Trogdor. And then Braden right away, Trogdor! And everybody else is just face palming. It was fantastic. Yeah.
I just face palmed all over again.
That's right. All right.
How was your week?
Well, my week was busy. As life has been these past 2 years, since I had 4 children. And being a homeowner too, there's a lot of stuff that I have to get prepared for winter. But between all of that, I did manage to squeeze in some time playing WoW. WoW Classic. I haven't touched retail WoW in, it's got to be months. On that note,
I'm not sure if you saw my Discord message, but I did log in to see the new Worgen and Goblin models, and they look
I did see that.
Spectacular.
They do, hey?
Yeah.
But your message says that you don't get the how everyone's over the moon over them.
No. I don't understand why you're so fascinated with high fidelity graphics. Like I'm okay with both, good and bad. I don't care. We covered this before. I'm just saying. Yeah. I don't understand how you can't, especially since you played old games when you were little. I don't know how you can't appreciate them. I don't know.
Well, in a nutshell, I like to look at what I'm seeing and think, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. And if I've never seen anything better than a 18 polygon Mario in Mario 64, looks fantastic. But when you get to see everything newer than that, then you go back to Mario 64, and it's just irksome for me. It offends my eye.
But when you're reading a really good fantasy novel that describes things really well, you're like, oh man, this is awesome. You can draw out a whole Cloud City in your brain or whatever. But then you compare it to something you read 5 years ago that's lesser, obviously, and you're like, no, I still enjoy that. Right? No?
I don't think one really relates well to the other, because when you're reading something, so much of it is how good your imagination is.
Right, but something like Harry Potter, like the first Harry Potter book has like no description of anything. It's just dialogue mostly. And yet I have like I can go back, it takes me a couple hours to read that book, and it's like awesome every time I read it. Even though I recognize while I'm reading it, man, this is like poorly written, I'm still like, this is awesome.
Yeah, but I've been on the other side of that, especially with collegiate level, English study courses, where somebody will they'll sit there and describe the hell out of something for 3 pages, and you're just like, okay, let's skip. Let's move on, because I don't know all of this detail. But to see it, right? To see it, you take it all in at a glance. Right? You don't need to have described to you the 783 trees that you can see. However, being able to stand atop a cliff and look down at those 783 trees, that has a nice distinct effect, right? You don't need to describe every single tree just to appreciate the beauty of it, because you can take it all in all at once. But one way or the other, that really doesn't have anything to do with with what I was talking about when I started talking about what I did in gaming this week. So to get back on topic, I did play WoW Classic quite a bit this week. I probably managed to squeeze in about 5 to 8 hours, maybe. So I'm pretty happy with that. That's good progress for me. I have decided that if I want to make the most out of my time, I'm going to play all of my characters on rested XP. So it's going to take a while for me to get a max level character, because I have to split my time between 3 characters. For anybody that doesn't know, when you play WoW, if you log your character off in a city or an inn or some kind of refuge like that, you generate rest XP, which means that the next time you log into the game for a certain amount of time, you earn double XP on...
It's not an amount of time, it's an amount of experience.
Right. Yeah, that's right. It's not measured by time. You generate an amount of rested experience, and then you get 2x the experience on everything until that rest bar is used up. So in order for me to be the most efficient, I've decided that I'm going to only play my characters on rest. So at this point, I have a level 20 and a level 16, and I think a level 13 or 14. Kind of all on the go at the same time. So yeah, I won't be as quick as Jeff. I won't get up to 52 in any time soon, but by the time I do get up to level 60, I'll have a whole slew of them instead. So that's a good trade-off for me. Plus I get bored. The real reason is it's not because I don't want to dedicate myself to one character. The real reason is because I find myself running out of quests, and I don't like just mindlessly grinding mobs. So I figured that if I have 2x experience on every single mob I kill, then I'll level up fast enough that I don't run out of quests. Or if I do run out of quests at the end of a zone, I don't have to grind for as long to get to the next zone. So that's the whole thought process behind that. I did also, like I said I was going to do last episode, I said that I was going to take a look at the Bethesda mobile game, Elder Scrolls Blades. We talked about Bethesda, the game developer, last week, and I had never really seen nor heard of Elder Scrolls Blades, and I guess it's in early access right now. I didn't realize that until I downloaded it. I don't know what early access means if everybody has access to it, but it probably just means that the game is unfinished and they plan on finishing it in the future.
That's exactly what it means.
Yeah, but it was a very neat, very interesting experience. It brought me back to, Morrowind and the limited amount that I played Oblivion, but also Skyrim, right? The whole character creation process. First of all, the world is beautiful. The amount of data that they pack into that little app, like it's high fidelity, very, very picturesque graphics. And I don't have an iPhone 10 or 11 or whatever. I just have an iPhone 8. Like, it's nothing phenomenal, and it handles the graphics just fine. And it looks fantastic. It plays fantastic. You can either choose to click to move, or you can use the dual. What do they call that when you can use two joysticks on the screen? You just move your thumbs around. Wherever you put a thumb down. If you put a thumb down in like any of the bottom quadrants, like a joystick pops up under your thumb, and then you just move it around.
Oh yes,
which is kind of neat. It's a nice addition to the old kind of clunky style that they first come out with in those types of games. Because I always found myself, like, my thumb would slip off of the direction, especially when it was a game that I was playing that had like a high intensity, like Gun Bros or whatever. I'm like, oh no, gotta run this way, and everything's catching me because I'm no longer running because my thumb has slipped off the the joystick. But anyways, getting back to Blades, I've only been at it for about an hour and a half now. Got a couple of quests completed. I'm not super enthused with the combat because you basically just click and hold on the screen and you swing on release. So when your thumb releases off the touch screen is when you actually attack. And the reason I don't like that is because my thumb's always in the way, right? I want to see
Right.
what I'm attacking, and some of it is timing, like the what do they call skeevers, the little rats that jump at you in the caves and stuff.
Yeah.
So they're outside of range until they jump at me. So I have to wait for them to jump at me to swing. And with my big fat thumb in the way, I have found that it's a little bit of a pain. But I'm sure it's something that I can get over eventually. So yeah, it's a neat experience. I encourage anybody who has a fondness for the Elder Scrolls games to pick it up, give it a try. Yeah, because I quite enjoyed it, and I will probably play more of it. Yeah.
Does it
That was
cost
me.
money, or is it free?
No, it is absolutely free, 100% free. Maybe because it's early access. Maybe once they actually drop the full version, it won't be free.
I
have
imagine
noticed,
it has a store though.
It does, and I have noticed the additional currency that's characterized by microtransactions.
Right.
So I imagine that they're going to monetize either in whole or in part through that additional currency.
So, before we move on to the main topic, this is sort of related, sort of not, because it's tough to explain. I had a very amazing last 3 hours of my life, and basically what happened was I was at work, and I had to load a 5-ton truck with a bunch of product, and the floor ramp is broken for the bay that I parked the truck in, so I had to put down physical metal ramps to connect obviously the truck to the building, and
Okay.
they wouldn't go down because the forks of the ramps themselves, it's complicated. They wouldn't go down all the way, and I was trying to fix it, so I bent down to fix it, and my phone slipped out of my breast pocket and just fell right through that perfect toaster-sized gap and fell 8 feet to the ground below. It shattered.
no.
It shattered completely.
Oh no!
So I was like, well, this sucks because I need my phone. It's not just
Of course.
it's not just a convenience thing. I'm not a phoneaholic, but it's important for work and stuff, right? So I immediately went to my boss and I was like, I gotta go to the TELUS store, and TELUS is a Canadian phone company. I have to go to the store and get this phone replaced because obviously it's broken. He's like, yeah, go. So I was like, okay. He's like, but you have to get back before 6:30 because I'm the closer for the building, and 6:30 is when we close down. So it was 4:45, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like rush hour. So I
Oh.
have to get through rush hour to get to this phone place, get a new phone, and then come back. So I raced off. I got there in pretty good time. I went in, and they were like, well, we can't. TELUS is stupid. I've been to other places. I've been to other stores like Kudo. Kudo is owned by TELUS, but they work differently. Anyway, other places, usually when I come in with a broken phone and I have a warranty or a, what's that called, like damage protection,
Yeah.
they'll just replace it on the spot, no problem. Sometimes, in TELUS's case, you have to like mail in and say, hey, my phone broke, and then they're like, okay, well, provide proof, and you have to do all this like back and forth nonsense, and you don't get a new phone right away. So with TELUS, they were like, yeah, you can do this thing with our people. I'm like, how long will that take? And they're like, it can take up to 2 or 3 weeks. I'm like, I can't go that long without a phone. So I had to buy out my broken phone and get a new phone, it was like 3 big ones. It was horrible.
Ooh,
But
ooh.
so I got it replaced, and then I was like, okay, I gotta get back. So I returned, and then I realized when I got back to the office that, oh my gosh, I didn't load the truck. My phone broke, and I just said, F it, I gotta get out of here. So I walked in, and at 6 o'clock, I only have like 3 employees left in the building. So I gathered all of them. I'm like, we gotta race these bins across the entire building because I parked the truck in the wrong spot, but I don't want to move it again because it's a huge 5-ton and it makes me nervous to drive it because it has air brakes and everything.
Oh.
So we had to like race these bins across the whole plant, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and there was like, it was probably like, I don't know, 14 or 15 bins of product, so it took multiple trips, even with 4 of us doing it. And then we got it loaded up, no problem. I was like, okay, sweet, I can shut down. So I started doing this thing last week where I decided to help get myself more fit. Instead of walking around the inside of the plant and locking all the doors, I would go outside the plant and lock the doors from the outside and then run to each door. It's just
a clever idea.
because the plant is so big and the doors aren't like easily, like you can't just run in a straight line to each door. Some of them are like behind fences and stuff like that. So it's a bit of an obstacle course to get to each door from the outside. While on the inside, obviously, it's very easy to reach each door. So I've been doing this running thing, and it's rather cold right now. And I'm a big guy. For those of you who don't know, I don't think I've ever described myself before. I'm 6'5", and I'm about 290 pounds. That weight isn't fat. I mean, there's a lot of fat. Let's be honest, but it's I carry it well. So it's not like I'm this big pumpkin running around. I have a bit of weight on me.
At 6'5", 290 pounds is not that big.
Right. I mean, I started at this company at like 370 pounds, so and even then, I was a little bit pudgy, but I wasn't like a roly-poly, like circle human being, right?
So it's been good for you working there, is what you're saying.
Yes. But the supervisor job is just less active than my older job, so I've been trying to like encourage myself to be more active. But anyway, so because it's colder outside, when I'm running around the plant to lock all the doors, it like that cold air gets into your lungs, and you're like, and you're just like, it's not pain. I don't know how to describe that. It's like in the back of your throat, you can feel it, even like long after you've stopped running. I don't know how to describe it. It's weird.
Yeah, there's a sensation almost like you've had a hacking cough for a few days, and
Yeah.
you're just on the mend, but it's still there.
Exactly. So
Yeah,
that's
I know that feeling.
That's sort of what I've been experiencing for the last hour. For some reason, it's not going away. I've been doing this for a week. It's only just hit me today, and so it's rather cold right now. I think it's like 5 degrees outside.
Yeah, our weather up here in Canada took a turn for the worse. Actually, I think most of our listeners are Canadian, so I should stop saying up here in Canada. But yeah, it did take a turn for the worse in the west here. We saw temperatures as cold as -5 Celsius just the other night. So It's been getting chilly.
Which I'm totally okay with. I like warm weather, but I like cold weather too. So it's working out for me so far. But so I got all my work stuff done. I locked it all down. I couldn't get out until about 7 p.m. And I was like, okay. I got to get home because the podcast is in an hour. I need to make myself some supper. I'm driving home, and our parking lot just got paved, so it's too wet to park on. So I have to park rather far away. So then I was like, okay, well, I need to go. I need to pick up a couple groceries, so I can't run from my car to home because some of the groceries are kind of delicate, and I don't want to risk like banging them against something or dropping them or something. So I had to walk from my car to the apartment, and so it took longer than I expected. But before this happened, before I had to walk from my car to my apartment, I was at the intersection, the last light controlled intersection before my apartment, and it was at a red light. I was at the front of the line, and what I do when I'm waiting for the light to turn is I look like at the traffic that's like coming, the traffic that has the green light. I look like down the road at all the different kinds of vehicles and stuff, and I try to guess which vehicle is which kind because I'm not a car guy, so it takes me a little while to like figure out which is which. It's just a little inner game I have while I wait for lights to change. So I'm sitting there looking like far right, not even looking straight ahead, because of course, also looking far right, you can see the counter for the crosswalk, and when the counter reaches 0, then the lights change. So I could tell when the light was going to change by looking just straight right. So I'm looking straight right and watching all these cars, watching the numbers, and like this huge like head-on collision happens right in front of me.
Oh no.
They weren't going very fast, but they smashed right into each other. So both people were totally fine, but they were like blaming each other. So they stopped in the middle of the intersection and just started yelling at each other. And I was like, huh, okay. Their cars weren't totaled or anything. They just, I guess I over-exaggerated how bad the damage was there. They didn't smash, they bumped, because they were both turning. But they started yelling at each other, and then the one lady like walked up to me, and I was like, why is she approaching my car? I rolled down my window, I'm like, can I help you? She's like, you saw it, what happened? It's her fault, isn't it? And I was like, I wasn't watching. She's like, you're at the front of the line, and she started yelling at me, and I was like, I wasn't watching. And I was like super stressed out already because my phone broke, and like it was transferring data, and it took forever to like transferring data from the broke phone to the new phone, and it was taking forever. And I was like, all my notes are on my phone, and if I can't transfer all the data, I might not be able to look at the data or the notes on my phone for the episode. And I was all super stressed out, and I didn't see the accident actually happen, so I was like, I can't help you. And I started raising my voice because I was just annoyed and frustrated. I'm like, I just want to go home. I have to park like 4 blocks away. This is horrible. And eventually she stopped yelling at me and started yelling at other people, and I just moved around the accident because honestly I would have stopped and partaken in as a witness, but I honestly didn't see anything.
Right.
So I moved around them and kept going, and yeah, that's my life. So my phone finished transferring data to my new phone, but my new phone has to organize the files, and that takes a long time. So my new phone is sitting in the other room charging, and I'm holding my broken phone. And the reason the broken phone still works, but half the screen is black. So I can pull up my notes for this episode and hope that the rest of the screen doesn't go black before I get to the end of my notes.
Well, I guess maybe you should go first then.
Why, thank you.
I know you've just been like talking forever. If you're confident, I can go first, and we can let your voice have a bit of a break. But
I lack all confidence.
Well, maybe we will just throw it to fate then.
I have no trouble with talking.
Well, whatever you want to do, man. I'll leave that up to you.
So today's episode is based entirely on AR and VR. I'll get into exactly what that means in a second. But to prepare for today, I went out of my way to do a couple things, including downloading a few phone apps that are sort of AR games. I watched a movie called VR Troopers, and it was garbage.
Sounds like it.
It was based
Sounds
in
like Space Troopers.
It was in like, I think it was released in like '94 or something. But it's like, it's nonsense. It's like they don't know how VR actually works back then. So when they're like trying to like make it part of their plot, it makes no sense. Like at the very beginning, the characters are like, because it looks like Power Rangers, like sort of budget. So like these characters, these like this culturally diverse set of characters are like standing there, and the screen pops on, and it's some guy in like a virtual world, and he's like, "Greetings, I'm coming to you from virtual reality," and they're, "Oh my gosh!" And it turns into this weird. They have to turn on these VR headsets or the AR headsets or whatever it is to like take control of robots to beat people up and stuff. And it's like it's very Power Rangers-esque, and it's very stupid. But
a solid 2.2 out of 10.
Oh yeah. So let's get into this. Sacrifices I Make. That was a horrible movie. Well, I think it was like a TV show, but I only watched the first episode. So augmented reality, not to be confused with virtual reality. Though the two share similar beginnings and are now being lumped together, what they provide interactively for someone is actually quite different. Where VR, virtual reality, creates a whole other world through your headset, AR, augmented reality, superimposes CGI onto the real world around you, also through some sort of headset. While the future of both AR and VR hopes for smaller devices such as smart glasses, there's still a good decade or two before we see that kind of thing in like common life. If we compared the development of AR and VR to the evolution of games, like consoles, they're both still sitting in the era of Atari. In other words, we've just scratched the surface. While Daniel's going to talk about VR today, I'm going to explain AR, its uses, its future, its problems, and its application in gaming. Now, before we look at gaming with AR, I wanted to briefly talk about how AR is projected to affect the world at large first. There are already phone apps that require you to only take a picture of a room, and it will compute the exact dimensions of the room, including its windows and doorways. Imagine an architect who could just don some glasses and construct a virtual version of what they wanted to build, in the same space that they would be designing the real thing. In military simulations, you could have a mock battlefield where you can do weapon practice on real people without any potential harm at all. Vehicle simulations for training such as airplanes and submarines, trains, even semis. Imagine sitting in the cockpit of a plane and your glasses highlight every crucial switch you need to flip before you think about getting off the ground. In emergency situations, when panic normally destroys the nerves, what if instructions were visually drawn out so you could focus on the correction? So, like I said earlier, I downloaded a game on my phone in anticipation for the episode, as I've no real experience with AR or VR yet. There's this store that used to be open at the mall near me called it was called something like the VR Experience. That's been shut down. I don't know why. I never went to it. I always wanted to, and now it's too late, basically. In Midtown here, there's this place called the 9D Experience. I don't know why it's called that. I actually drove there. I didn't know prices or anything. It turns out it was a little bit too expensive for me, but I did want to. I just like stood there and watched other people who were partaking, and apparently that place gets really, really bad reviews. So there weren't very many happy customers. So it wasn't a very long visit, basically. Anyway, so the game I downloaded projects an obstacle course for you to run with lasers to avoid. It's pretty rudimentary as far as AR is concerned, but it was certainly a very interesting experience. It's like it creates fake walls that you have to like walk around, but there's also like lasers on the ground, lasers on the walls, lasers moving around that you have to like duck under and stuff. It's easier to play in like a big open area, which is perfect for me because the parking lot of my plant is like vast, so I had like nothing to fear running into basically. I've also played more of Pokemon Go this week, and saw all the improvements they've been making to it. My initial and still current problem with it was that the only thing AR about it was that it uses Earth as a map. All the streets and malls and stuff are taken into consideration when placing gyms and the like. I expected the Pokemon to like literally be inserted onto a city street that you saw through your phone. That, however, wasn't the experience I ended up having. Though AR in design, it isn't far enough in the right direction that I'd end up impressed by that aspect of it. The laser maze game was an inch closer to what I'd want, simply mapping graphics over my surroundings, so I'd have to avoid lasers without walking into anything. It was fully interactive, with just a few problems. I tried it inside, and I had to recalibrate several times. It's like sometimes it loses track of obstacles, and you do end up walking into a wall, at which point you're basically pulled out of the game so you can recalibrate. I mean, that's to be expected, but it's still a negative point nonetheless. I don't want to sound overly judgmental, instead that my critiques point out what I expect even my rudimentary AR experiences to be. That still sounds bad. Let's just say I meant nothing negative by it. It behaved as expected. Where VR can create an entire virtual world, AR can transform your house into a dungeon. Well, conceivably at least. There have already been great strides in this direction, creating plates of textured graphics in the multitudes so they can be fit onto any wall, floor, or ceiling and adapt to any environment. Suddenly your kids playing the floor is lava can become a true-to-life but harmless experience.
I never thought of that. Wow. That's a great idea. Sorry to interrupt.
As early as 1901, augmented reality began as a concept in many people's heads, evolving into the sensorama in the late 50s that conveyed sounds, visuals, vibrations, and even smell into the participant. It was a full body experience. Imagine sitting at a computer desk where you have to fit your head into a slot so tight that you can't even turn your head. This could have been like the birthplace of claustrophobia. I saw a picture of the machine and I was like, oh my gosh, that's like a torture device. Anyway, it wasn't until about 1987 that the precursor to modern AR truly took hold. This was a system that simulated a look at the stars from a clunky headset. It was the first ever iteration of heads-up display. It wasn't until these last 10 years that we've as a society taken a serious look at AR. Mobile phones and handheld consoles are nowadays released with AR apps, and before we know it, we're going to just accept AR as a way of life. I mean, remember when phones were only used by like 5% of the population in 1995? And then by like 2005, that number was like 70% of the population, and nowadays nearly everyone has it.
Yeah.
The way AR is progressing, I feel like it'll be a way of life before we realize it's consuming our surroundings.
It's funny that you say that. Sorry to interrupt. It's funny that you say that, but I've often wondered, what's the next big thing after the smartphone? Like, what's the next thing that everybody's going to have, that similar, that takes the world from, the notch that we're in up another notch so that everybody's got one. And I was wondering if it was going to be like wearables, like a smart glasses or contact lens or something in that vein of augmented reality.
Well, actually, touching on that for a second, they are designing those. I'm not sure if you'd get the reference, but Leela from Futurama?
I don't know. I haven't watched Futurama.
Have you ever watched Reboot?
Yep.
You know how Bob has glitch?
Mm-hmm.
That's what people are like designing now. Is like a device that's on your wrist.
Huh.
That sort of wraps around very slightly, but it can also be straight on. Yeah, I've seen pictures. I'm not sure how properly developed it is yet. Anyway, as augmented reality flies to the future, we can realistically expect such things as robots operated remotely by everyone from the working man to the soldier to the scientist and to the doctor. Imagine performing surgery remotely with robotic arms that can correct natural human shaking, or a scientist creating a three-dimensional scale map of the universe, soldiers using robots in potentially lethal environments, lifestyle applications such as having artificial tints on car or house windows, or just listing off ingredients on the countertop as you prepare a meal, are all legitimate possibilities for everyone in at least first world nations, I guess. If you've never thought about AR before, such movies as Iron Man have really shown what AR can potentially do. Anytime Tony Stark is designing his suit or some other invention and light projects around him like an interactable computer screen, that's a rather futuristic aspect of augmented reality. However,
but still within our ability to understand.
Absolutely, yes. However, just as there were 1,000,001 retro consoles, as each minute upgrade led to an entirely different console, AR and VR are experiencing the exact same in their own constant upgrading. I hesitate to buy a VR headset at the moment because every year there seems to be a new one, and neither do I have the money nor do I want to own 40 versions of a console. Additionally, following the explosive popularity of Pokemon Go, there was also a proportionate increase in vehicular accidents and fatalities. The more someone is immersed in non-reality, the greater chance they'll hurt themselves or others. In fact, there were over 100,000 accidents that were directly caused by distracted driving while playing Pokemon Go.
No way.
It was a notable increase from the norm. The combined costs of these accidents and associated deaths totaled at least $2 billion and at most $7 billion.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. It was also found that the majority of people, if given the option via something like AR, would edit out the ugliness of their surroundings, like garbage and graffiti. So as much as this technology can potentially cost, it can also profit in huge ways, even if it seems as simple as affecting one's emotional stability. I mean, this could reach an extreme with pornography latching on to every new form of media and technology. Pervs could be walking down the street filled, in their vision, of naked people and sexual advertisements, while a family just behind that same person walk down the street and see fairies and butterflies and rainbows overhead. In one motion, AR can give us ultimate freedom while simultaneously unleashing the inner urges of creeps everywhere. The big fear is when people start to desire an augmented world over 100% reality. This implies that all information should not be always and at once indulged to those who seek it. Where AR has the potential to reveal everything about every part of the environment you are in, the real world might become boring and uninteresting. When reality becomes ignored, social ability is flushed down the toilet, and important cues from your immediate surroundings will be overlooked in favor of AR. This is referred to as the virtually augmented key. Once the key is ignored, people will stop caring about the real world. While there aren't a huge number of games right now that utilize the AR technology, we can see examples of it in some cases. For those of you familiar with Isaac Clarke from Dead Space, I'm sure you'll remember how quest objectives were presented. Instead of having a magic line leading us to a destination, it is actually logically explained that the line is being projected by your equipment, that only your character can see it, but that it is an actual directive. I think that's a really cool little, weird lore detail, that line you see as a quest objective is actually part of your equipment. Pokemon Go and Harry Potter Wizards Unite are both games that utilize what's known as location-based gaming. It's a subset of AR that utilizes the real world's map instead of projecting virtual graphics into reality. And at this point, I hate to end it like this, but the half of my screen is black and I can't see my end footer thing. Son of a gun!
Well, I applaud your tenacity in going so far as you did. That's impressive. So if we were to kind of broad strokes estimate where AR is going in, like what direction it's going in. Of course, it's just guessing at this point. But where, according to your research, what are you thinking is kind of nearest on the horizon, or most exciting on the horizon, anyways?
I think having smart glasses is incredible. Obviously, for people like you and me who are visually impaired, it's extra awesome to have the aspect of having even one of my lens being like electronically powered to like show me, like,
kidding.
As I'm walking down the street, it says, "Hey, the weather, it's gonna rain," or "Pull out an umbrella," and like everywhere you go, it's just gathering information from that local area and just slowly feeding it to you. So it's not necessarily taking over your life or anything, but you're like, hey, I don't have to look at my phone. This isn't you. It's. I think it was Google. Don't quote me on this. I think it was Google though that said that the whole idea of smart glasses would not count as like distracted life. You know how distracted driving would be, like looking down at your cell phone? With smart glasses, you wouldn't have to look down. Right. It would be something that's just immediately in your vision, like looking at a sign on the road.
Yeah. And two, if you've got the tech to connect with everything around you, like your glasses are seeing and feeding you information, you've got the tech to know when you're driving or something else that requires a lot of attention, and those devices should be able to go into driving mode, or clear the screen so you can put all of your attention on the road.
Right. I mean, there's other things too, like as far as gaming is concerned, I don't think AR is nearly as dynamic as VR is, but I do think AR has a lot of applications for, like, Pokemon Go is obviously a great example of promoting like a physical lifestyle. I feel like AR can do that. I can encourage that a lot more than VR can.
Yeah, that you hit the nail on the head there. I'm most excited. So, our listeners, one thing or two things that our listeners might not know about me is that, number one, I absolutely love to golf. Golf is it is my single most favorite sport on the planet, and I would do it every day of the week and twice on Sundays if I could manage it.
You like it even more than frolf?
Is that frisbee golf?
Yeah.
No, that's not a thing, frolf. That's not a thing.
Oh, trust me.
But the second thing that our listeners might not know about me is I have a condition in my eyes that I'm not even sure what it's called, if there's even a name for the condition. But what it means is that my myopia, my nearsightedness, is it's progressive to a point. Like, not that it gets worse, or regressive like it gets worse, or progressive like it gets better, but rather, depending on how far away something is, it can be clear, but I cannot read it. And so I'm speaking of signs specifically, or in the case of my earlier example, golf balls. I will lose a golf ball 100 feet after it leaves my club. So I love to golf. I cannot see where my golf ball goes. So I rely very often, if I'm golfing alone, I rely on hearing where it lands, right? And that's not always feasible, because the wind will kick up and the trees will rustle, or, it'll land in some grass somewhere that kind of muffles the sound, and so you can't tell where it is. I lose golf ball after golf ball on the course doing something I absolutely love, and it's simply because I just can't see where the ball goes. Now, what I would, and this applies to driving as well, reading signs. Like, I can drive 10 out of 10 on any physical test, but if I'm in the city or something, or I don't have my nav running, I have a very hard time reading like street signs, so I know where to turn, because by the time I can read them, I'm on them, and it's too late to make the turn. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the prospect of having a sorry, let me start again. My optometrist says that he can correct my vision to, he asked me, do you work at a computer? I told him yes. So he said, okay, so we're going to correct your vision to like 10 feet. That's the optimal range. But everything after that starts getting a little bit more and more difficult to see. The picture is still clear. I don't know how to explain it. The picture's still clear, but I just don't see it that well. So he can correct my vision to 100 feet or 100 or 200, 300 feet.
Is it like a focus thing?
It's not exactly a focus thing, because then the clarity would be impeded. I don't know how to explain it, rather than almost like interference, almost like there's
like visual white noise.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good way. That's a good way of putting it. I get, like, the lines, they're clear but not crisp, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
If I look at the edge of the edge of a window or the edge of a TV screen, across the room, it's clear and it's crisp as all get out. But if I actually try and read the letters that are on the screen, I can't until I'm 10 feet away.
Interesting.
Anyways, it's a unfortunate condition. But the ability for a pair of smart glasses or something like that to react on the fly, to be able to focus that image, because what it is I have an irregularly shaped retina. Retina? That's the back of the eye, right? The curvature of the back of my eye is not standard. It's not normal. So focusing an image on it is difficult. My actual biological lens can't it can't bend enough to focus a far image, and it bends too much to focus a near image. So it's a strange dichotomy. It's unfortunate, but anyways, biology aside, to have something that can on the fly react to what I'm looking at, can sense what I'm looking at, and can bring it into focus for me, that right there would change my world. So that's what I'm most excited about. That's a very long-winded explanation of what I'm most excited about in the future for AR.
Yeah, I mean, effectively, it could fix all eye conditions, really.
You'd think so. Yeah, it should be able to. It would be
well,
a wearable.
not all, I guess.
It would be a wearable until it can become like a contact lens, and then maybe after that an implanted lens. But yeah, it should be. It's within the realm of possibility. Maybe even in the next 20 years.
Contact lens, by the way, are already being researched as far as AR is concerned. They even have this idea of using a laser to imprint messages into your eye.
Oh, really?
I didn't look too far into it, but it was very weird.
That's neat to think about, because I've actually been considering getting laser eye surgery lately. So because my mom had it done when she was 45, and she enjoyed about 10 years. No, because she's not 55 yet, or she's just 55 now. She enjoyed 6 or 7 years of good clear vision, but then very shortly after she got the laser surgery, she still needed reading glasses. So I was like, well, okay, what was the point really? Why'd you go and spend $3,000 to have that done when you're just going to need glasses anyways? So I'm at the point in my life, I'm only 31. I'm sitting here thinking, if I want to get some good use out of my laser surgery before my eyes start degrading as old age sets on, I should really be doing this now, right? Earlier than later.
Yeah, my brother got his eye surgery when he was 27, 28, and he says he's had perfect vision ever since. He said, I think his is 30/20, or whatever the better version is. Yeah.
Oh man. Good for him.
I could never do it. I'm afraid of going blind.
Oh, is that right?
I don't trust the lasers.
I mean, I think everybody is a little nervous about going blind.
Oh, he said he had no trepidation about it at all. He's like, let's do it! And he just went into it.
There's hundreds of thousands of successful surgeries, all the time. So
yeah, oh yeah.
Knowing that, the statistics.
I know the statistics. I don't trust them.
Do you know the first person to do eye surgery did it on his wife? and he did it with a scalpel, and like peeled back her. Did he peel back her cornea and put an implant in, or did he just do micro cuts on her cornea? Either way, she trusted him. So
this grosses me out. Let's move on.
What have you got to lose? Moving on, we're going to talk about VR moving forward. And as Jefferson alluded to, the history of VR and the history of AR, they share some very, very common ancestry. So I'm going to just quickly kind of bang out some history here, and we're going to move into what VR looks like today and what we're hoping for in the future. So when you think about Hollywood movies, Jeff, Hollywood movies from the 1950s, you're probably thinking like, oh, barely getting color TV, maybe not even at that point. This is when as you were talking about the what did you call it? The Sensorama?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is when the video gimmicks like that were starting to come out. Modern widescreen was developed at that time. 3D stereoscopic movies. Right, that was a thing. So we discovered in like the 1830s that the human brain was stereoscopic in that it relied on two separate images and combined them into a 3D image. So we had at this point we had known it for over 120 years, and it took us that long to implement that into video capture. But anyways, so they had started experimenting with stereoscopic movies, the ill-fated smell-o-vision, as you alluded to before. All of these things kind of arrived over a 10-year stretch. But it wasn't until filmmaker Morton Heilig took things a little bit further. In 1957, he invented a large booth-like machine called the Sensorama, as you mentioned before, which was intended to combine multiple techs to give 1 to 4 people the illusion of being in a fully 3D immersive world, complete with smell, stereo sound, ooh, vibrations, and even atmospheric effects like wind in your hair. A few years later, in 1960, he honed a version of the idea into a patent for the world's first head-mounted display, promising stereoscopic 3D images, wide vision, and true stereo sound. Now, neither technology ever materialized in his lifetime, but they both helped lay the groundwork for the VR revolution to come. The first actual VR head-mounted display was created in 1968 by computer scientist Ivan Sutherland. Sutherland was one of the most important figures in the history of computer graphics, having developed the revolutionary Sketchpad software that paved the way for tools like computer-aided design, which we have college courses on at this point. Sutherland's head-mounted display was a project he described as the ultimate display. It connected to stereoscopic display from a computer program depicting simple virtual wireframe shapes, which changed perspective as the user moved his or her head. Because these are superimposed on top of a real background, this could also be seen as the birth of AR, which is augmented reality, in case anybody hasn't caught up with that just yet. However, it never developed into more than a lab project, possibly because the device's weight required it to be suspended from the ceiling on a mechanical arm like a periscope. Now, I saw a picture of this thing, and it looks menacing. It's like this giant thing perched above the user's head with a periscope of sorts moving down, and the user would look into it. Now, it was nicknamed the Sword of Damocles after the Roman myth about a sword which hangs above a person's head to teach them responsibility. So, and actually the picture does depict, it does look a lot like that proverbial sword. At around the same time that Ivan Sutherland was working on his Sword of Damocles project, a military engineer named Thomas Furness was busy developing an ambitious flight simulator project which eventually grew into something called the Super Cockpit. Furness continued working on the project through the 1980s with the result of being a training cockpit able to project computer-generated 3D maps, infrared and radar imagery, as well as avionic data into a real-time 3D space. According to Furness, the project cost into the hundreds of millions, which at the time, 1980s, I mean, this is a big deal. Way ahead of its time, the Super Cockpit allows a trainee pilot to control an aircraft using gestures, speech, and even ocular tracking. Developed by MIT in 1978 with a helping hand from DARPA, which I never looked up what DARPA was, DARPA.
DARPA? Wait a second.
What's
DARPA? Isn't that the... Oh, no, that's an actual thing. What was I thinking of? Oh, Dharma. Dharma is from Lost. Dharma is a fake.
Oh, that's right. The Dharma
governmental
initiative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
DARPA is Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency.
Oh, that's helpful. So, developed by MIT in 1978 with a helping hand from the Defense Agency, the Aspen movie map was basically a virtual reality take on Google Street View, which we all know about. But instead of a basic 3D graphics that could be created at the time, it used photographs taken from a car driving through Aspen, Colorado, giving the user an interactive first-person journey around the city. Running it required several laser disc players, a computer, and a touchscreen display. While there was no head-mounted display components on the project, the Aspen Movies Map Initiative used a first-person interactivity nevertheless, represented a smart examination of how VR could be used to transport people to other places. One of the first companies to attempt to launch a VR headset was Sega. Sega, the video game developer, which planned Sega VR as an accessory for the Genesis. With development starting in '91 and continuing to a couple years later, Sega VR was an attempt to squeeze more life out of the company's 16-bit games console. The visor-like look owes a lot to RoboCop and The Day the Earth Stood Still, with a sleek black plastic design that concealed LCD displays, stereo headphones, and internal inertial sensors for tracking head movement. Sega VR will create this is from a press release at the time. Sega VR will create the impression that you are exploring an alternate reality. As your eyes shift focus from one object to the next, the binocular parallax constantly changes to give you the impression of a three-dimensional world. Unfortunately, it was never released, with one somewhat amusing explanation being that Sega worried the virtual effect was too realistic and people would wind up hurting themselves while immersed. At the time, it was probably quite amusing. However, like you mentioned earlier, with the hundreds of millions or billions of dollars damage and people getting in accidents due to the Pokemon Go, maybe they were onto something.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah. Despite this, Sega VR makes our list for being one of the first attempts at a mainstream, consumer-facing virtual reality headset. Keeping in the same vein, the Nintendo Virtual Boy is a 32-bit tabletop video game console developed and manufactured by Nintendo. Released in '95, it was marketed as the first console capable of displaying stereoscopic 3D graphics. The player uses the console like a head-mounted display, placing their head against the eyepiece to see red monochrome display. The game uses a parallax effect to create the illusion of depth. Sales failed to meet targets, and by early '96, Nintendo ceased distribution and game development, releasing only 22 games for the system. So things were quiet for quite a while on the VR front until it was revisited in 2010 by an 18-year-old entrepreneur named Palmer Luckey, who created the first prototype of the Oculus Rift. Boasting a 90-degree field of view that hadn't been seen previously in a consumer device, it raised $2.4 million on Kickstarter a couple years later, before the company was purchased by Facebook for $2 billion in 2004. Lucky's decision to sell the company before shipping any prototypes to Kickstarter backers stirred up controversy for early supporters. However, in 2017, hundreds of companies were working on their own VR headsets. So that was VR as we knew it in yesteryear. We're going to move on now to today, to what VR looks like today. Founder and chief analyst at Artillery Intelligence, an organization of journalists and analysts who are tracking and predicting developments in VR and AR. So the founder, Michael Boland, he had this to say: the advent of standalone VR headsets like Oculus Quest, along with Facebook's investment in the technology and price competition, will make high-end VR accessible to larger audiences. That exposure will push the movement forward for VR as a consumer product and as an industry in 2020. And we are actually starting to see that today, with the pricing becoming more manageable, right, as we move forward in the future. So I wanted to cover the top 5 contenders for AR and roughly what we can expect to spend on any of these devices. So as we mentioned previously, the Oculus Quest is the Oculus brand's truly mobile, and the only one on this list that's truly mobile and doesn't require any other, that I'm aware of, doesn't require any other input other than the headset device itself. And these can be purchased for between 550 and 700 US, which translates into 730 to about $1,000 Canadian. So we're looking at a fairly steep investment. However, when you match it up against the others on the list, you might change your mind a little bit. The Oculus Rift S is the next one on the list. It needs to pair with a high-end gaming PC. Now, the Rift S itself cost about $550 US, which is 730 Canadian, and coupled with what's a high-end PC going for these days, Jeff?
A high-end PC?
Yes.
Like top of the line?
Well, I mean, something that can play pretty much anything you throw at it.
I would say around $3,000.
$3,000, right? So we're talking about a seven, and that's Canadian.
That's
so
Canadian, yes.
We're talking about a $730 investment on top of that $3,000 Canadian investment. So we're looking at, it's getting close to $4,000 to get an Oculus Rift and everything set up. Now, moving down, the next one, number 3 on the list, is the HTC Vive Pro. Now, it's important to understand that this list is not in any particular order. I'm not talking about one being better than any other. This is just the third one that I found. The HTC Vive Pro runs in at a staggering $1,365 US, or 1,820 Canadian dollars. Now, these are all prices that I found myself on Amazon. Or associated electronics websites and whatever else. So $1,820 US, and you again need a high-end gaming PC to make it functional. So we're talking at we're looking at about a $5,000 investment to get into an HTC Vive Pro if you are not already equipped with a high-end gaming PC.
Just to interject here, every single gamer on YouTube that I watch has the HTC Vive. Of the VR choices. I mean, some of them obviously, like Markiplier, I think has all of them, but some obviously the smaller guys have. I've noticed, like, by and large, the HTC Vive. Which versions I don't know, but you know.
Right. Now I know. I did see, when I was searching, I did see some of the other HTC products, the head-mounted display products that were not quite so pricey, but the Pro does represent kind of the highest end of probably not as much as you can spend, but at least mass-produced device.
Right.
Moving on to number 4 on the list is the PlayStation VR. So the starter bundle is about $475 US, which translates into $632 Canadian at the current exchange rate. And that also requires you to have a PS4. So what's the going rate for a PS4 right now? Probably around $450, $500.
Yeah, around there.
Yeah. So again, we're north of $1,000 to get into this VR experience. Now, finally, the budget option is called the Nintendo Labo. I believe I'm pronouncing that right. Nintendo, yeah. It's only going to run you about $40 to $80 US, or 50 to 100 Canadian. And it pairs with the Switch. However, it's made out of cardboard, and it's a product that they ship to you, and you have to build it yourself. And I think that you just slip your Nintendo Switch into it.
They did that with. Didn't Google do that Google Cardboard thing?
It could be. I didn't see it.
It was like a Google. You slipped your phone into it, basically.
Yeah, it's something like that. Anyways, I believe that you slip your Switch into it. So again, it requires that you have a Switch, which is probably about 300 Canadian, and then this cardboard thing is going to cost you anywhere from 50 to 100 Canadian. So
Stop saying Canadian. Most of our viewers are Canadian.
You're right. My apologies.
Yeah.
So it's
just as an aside here, the official Google Cardboard is $27.
$27?
Yeah.
There you go. So we have a couple of budget-friendly options. Now, they're not going to be the full experience, though. right? Because it's still going to use your standard 2D display. It's not going to be stereoscopic like these other ones are boasting. So it's easy to see the difference, I suppose, in between why, spending $50 to $100 on a cardboard thing versus the Oculus Quest, which was my first one on the list, being $1,000. It's actually, with the exception of the Nintendo and the Google option, it's actually the cheapest option on the list at between $730 and $950. So yeah, that's kind of where VR is sitting today as we speak at the tail end of 2019.
Right.
Yeah. So moving on to VR in the future, unless you had anything you wanted to add to that conversation.
No, my phone's black.
Your phone's black. There's nothing wrong with black, Jefferson. This is the 21st century.
I hate black.
Oh boy. That's a can of worms. I'm just sitting here nervously laughing and my palms are sweating thinking...
But I love red.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that communist?
I just don't know. No, red typically refers to it's very derogatory, but it typically refers to Native Americans.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Go Reds!
Before I'm going to move on. Oh my gosh. You're going to get us in so much trouble.
We'll be fine. I didn't
All
know.
Right.
That's ignorance, bliss, all that.
Can I talk now?
No.
As I was looking into VR in the future, I became extremely excited for what it's looking like what we're gonna see in the future. So there's a website called Helium, spelt like the element helium, but it's HEAL instead of HE.
So it's not spelled like it at all.
It's similar, very similar, and I did qualify that. They are a website that it boasts the first virtual and augmented reality platform powered by brainwaves and heart rate via consumer wearables. So what it does, it's a biometrically controlled, drugless solution for stress. Stress is a $300 billion industry in North America, and it's a people killer. It kills people all the time due to stress-related heart conditions, brain conditions, mental disorders. So this is Helium's response to these daily stresses. What they actually do is they are story-driven escapes, which are powered by the user's feelings of positivity and calm via their wearables and our, so this is Helium's website, our patented technology. So Helium stories packaged in a portable digital kit allow users to see their feelings see their feelings heal virtual worlds. Frontiers in Psychology and the Journal of Neuroregulation both published studies on Helium's ability to quickly reduce moderate anxiety and increase feelings of positivity in as little as 4 minutes using real-time EEG feedback and heart rate. Helium is used worldwide in areas of situational stress. Now, this reminded me a lot of the app Calm, C-A-L-M, Calm. I've been hearing people rave about it, and apparently it's got millions of downloads. People.
It's phenomenal.
I use it to de-stress. You use it too?
Yeah. I don't use it to de-stress. I use it to go to sleep.
Oh, yeah, and people use it that way as well. So this reminded me a lot of that. I haven't used it myself, but it reminded me a lot of the reviews that I hear back from Calm. So if millions of people are using it, it can't all be wrong, right? There's got to be something to it, and this is kind of the progression of just because Calm is just audible, right? There's nothing visual on the app.
There's pictures, but yeah.
So this actually relies on your how did they put it? Powered by users' feelings of positivity and calm via their wearables and patented technologies. So it superimposes you into a situation, into a story where you can experience success and calm to heal your stress. So I thought that was super, super exciting. A woman named Sarah Hill is the CEO and chief storyteller at Helium. She responded by saying VR and AR for healthcare will take off in 2020 as the VR-ceutical and AR-ceutical industry leverages its power as a drugless solution to some existing pharmaceuticals. Those are interesting terms. I've never heard those before, VR-ceutical and AR-ceutical, but it's interesting. We will also see, she goes on to say, more permanent virtual objects and multi-user experiences emerge with the 5G and edge computing. I'm not sure what edge computing is. I didn't have time to look that up. Do you have any idea what that alludes to?
Edge computing?
Edge, the word edge, like I'm on the edge of something?
Yeah, I've never even heard of that.
Maybe they just mean cutting edge or, brand new, on the verge. Either way, Helium is also looking forward to a consumer-friendly set of glasses that allows the user to seamlessly switch between virtual and augmented reality. William Griggs, a founder at virtualrealityrental.co, feels that it has education prospectives. He says, VR technology has quickly found a home in the classroom, and I think its use is going to increase in the coming school year. There's a number of different lessons that can transform the learning experience, and students can learn about ancient Roman history or human anatomy up close. I think he's forgetting that teenagers are learning about human anatomy up close all the time.
Yeah.
He goes on to claim that it can become a virtual tool for recruiting prospective students and for conducting campus tours. Now, that's an interesting thought. If I live in, I live in northern Alberta, where anywhere I go, I have to drive. But if I want to go to the University of Manitoba or, University of Toronto or something like that, Vancouver School of the Arts, I have to travel a very long time to get there. I'm talking about a drive. If I'm going to Vancouver, I'm probably talking about a drive of 20 hours ish, 25 maybe. Or if I take a plane, probably only a 2-hour flight. But
driving where?
To Vancouver.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Yeah.
Well, maybe 20 is more realistic. 25 might be not quite so realistic, but it's 12. It's a 12-hour drive to get to Kelowna, BC.
I know,
where
but
I am.
Vancouver's not that much further. I would say it's like a 14-hour drive.
Are you sure? Is that all? Either way, it's a huge commitment on my part to drive that far. So the option to conduct a campus tour on VR it's an attractive one anyways. David Heaney, a Upload VR website writer and software developer, is not quite as optimistic. Still optimistic, but not quite as radical as some of these other guys. He says he hates to be anticlimactic, but 2019 was a hardware cycle year. So 2020 will likely mostly be boring improvements in software and releases of games, which I don't know about you, but releases of games sounds pretty stellar for me. He might call it boring, but I don't. The next-gen hardware is expected sometime around 2022. Finally, my last futurist is somebody named Nava Berg. I hope I'm getting that right. She's an independent communications professional. So she had this to say. Until earlier this year, VR was known mainly for gaming and developers. But with wireless VR headsets, the future of defying distance, as Oculus says, is finally here. More people will be consuming content by transporting themselves into it, versus a 2D video chat or 2D newsfeed. When it comes to social VR, people will begin meeting and working in VR for business thanks to Oculus Quest apps like Rec Room, Oculus Venues, and Big Screen VR, Rummy VR, and also AltSpace, which is coming soon. On the fun side of social VR, Facebook's app, tentatively known as Facebook Spaces, will allow Facebook users to be immersed in social media and on the go. As somebody who is just beginning a career with a multinational company, I'm beginning to understand the importance of telecommunications and being able to attend meetings and whatever else remotely. you know, our tiny little location, our tiny office only has 5 people that work there. However, the location manager and our sales professional, they still have to attend, and even myself occasionally have to attend, you know, these large conferences that are, you know, 5 to 8 hours drive, or, you know, got to drive 5 hours to get to the airport and then another 2-hour flight just to attend a couple of meetings and come back the very next day. So the ability to be able to superimpose yourself into a virtual conference room and have the same freedoms, the same networking abilities as you would have if you were there in person, that is extremely attractive, especially when our bottom line is so tight, right? Being such a small office, it's expensive to send our guys out there.
Yeah.
So, you know, our bottom line's pretty tight. It would represent thousands and thousands of dollars saved for us every year. So that is VR in a nutshell, my friend. And man, I got super excited in this episode. I just love the prospect of technology advancing, and I hope that I'm not the same person that my parents are. Well, my dad's not bad, but some parents, I guess both my parents aren't bad, but some parents just let technology kind of pass them by.
Yeah. Definitely.
And maybe that's gonna happen to us eventually, but at this point, I'm excited for the future and not dreading it like I think some of the older generation is.
It's weird how that works too, because like I look at somebody like my brother who's in this weird polarized position where he keeps totally up with like desktop computers and consoles and stuff like that, but when it comes to like cell phones, he's never owned a cell phone in his entire life. So it's weird how certain types of technology hits some people and misses others.
Wait, this is your brother?
Yeah.
Your brother doesn't own a cell phone?
No.
Holy. I wonder if that's a...
My dad gave him a cell phone and he's never activated it.
That's gotta be it's got to be an ironic statement at this point. Like he's trying to be against the grain.
I don't know. Honestly, I couldn't even posit a guess because he's, how old am I? He's 40.
Oof.
So, like, I don't know. I have no idea what's led him down his path to never owning a cell phone. He might have been too old for them when they became really popular amongst like the teen generation. And then that teen generation became young adults and became like full adults, and the whole time he was just like a generation ahead of them, and just it didn't compute for him. Maybe, I don't know.
So Stuart, if you're listening to this, you should weigh in. Type in the comments below. Let us know why you don't have a cell phone or refuse to get a cell phone.
I don't think you'll ever listen to this.
Well, now you have an excuse to show it to him. Be like, hey, we asked you a question, so you need to listen to the whole ding dang episode.
No, the whole series. You gotta find it
right from the beginning. It'll be like an interesting scavenger hunt for him.
But more on VR. Another thing about it that's really interesting to me is there's sort of two modes of VR that exist right now for gaming. One is sit at your computer, look around, play. You're either on rails or you move with a controller. I have heard that if you're playing like a first-person type game and you're moving around with the controller, it can be kind of almost like seasick inducing because your character's moving but you aren't. So it's like an inner ear kind of like confusion, is your brain thinks you're supposed to be moving but you're not. So I've heard that can be a bit of a problem. And then there's the variety of VR where you basically have to set up an entire room for your VR play so that you can move around very slightly, and apparently that helps offset the inner ear dizziness that can be caused by the stationary aspect of VR.
Yeah. Well, do you remember those omnidirectional treadmills?
Yes.
That was potentially I mean, it had great potential, but holy cow, would that have been an expensive operation for the average Joe to get?
Oh yeah.
Right? That would have been an enormous barrier to entry.
But it would have like still like that. That's the kind of thing that I think is very realistic in for our future. For at least for VR gaming. I don't know how that specific thing can affect everything, every form of media regarding VR. But I'm sure it was you that I spoke to. I'm not sure if it was before the VR, before the podcast even existed. But I found this thing. It was like a Swedish invention where they wear like these weird shoes, and there's like this grid of metal on the ground that the way their shoes slot into the metal, they can move in any direction, but they don't actually move.
Huh.
And I whoever I was talking to about that, we talked about its applications for VR, where you could wear it, and if you could attach something to your feet or your legs or something, so that the VR game could recognize that you're moving your legs, so it knows that you're moving, it would be able to simulate the motion in the game itself.
That's very interesting. I'd never seen that before.
I don't.
I'm gonna have to look that up.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was called. I just know it was some weird European thing, Swedish or maybe Swiss or Norwegian. Come on, help me name all of the European countries.
All the Scandinavian countries.
Just all of them. Maybe it was Portuguese.
It's not Portuguese. Yeah, no. You got Sweden. You've got Switzerland. You have Belgium. You have. Trying to think, like those are those fingers in the north. Below that, I think you've got the Ukraine. I'm not very great on my geology,
Clearly.
geography. I can't even.
No. You're bad at geology too.
Apparently, I'm just bad at English.
But yeah, actually, I all I did was type in omnidirectional, and it finished it for me. And there's plenty of different iterations now that exist for omnidirectional treadmills.
Interesting.
That are like specifically designed for VR.
Neat.
Yeah, there's one called Cat VR, KAT. That looks interesting. I don't know how it works, but it looks interesting.
Well, I think that about does it for us. Jeff, what are you up to this week coming up?
I think I'm not really going to play that much more of AR games. Pokemon Go didn't do it for me. It was the same as when it first came out, so I'm just going to uninstall it from my phone and just move on with my life. That maze game I might keep, because that one's actually quite interesting. I can't remember what it's called. It's a Laser Mazy or something like that. It's a fairly generic name. But Chrono Trigger, as always, until I beat that game. I might play it until I like unlock all the endings. I don't know what my end game goals are for it. World of Warcraft, obviously. I don't really have any urges to play any other games. I did right before Classic came out, and let me tell you, this is like absolute proof that I forgot that Classic was coming out. Is like 3 days before Classic came out, I bought My Time at Portia on Steam, and that's like a 3D version of Stardew Valley. It's like Harvest Moon.
Oh yeah, nice.
And I like Harvest Moon. For some reason, that game has always clicked with me. Same with Stardew Valley. Stardew Valley is phenomenal. And so it's a very relaxing game to play.
Yeah, they're pretty low impact, eh? They're pretty low impact. Like they don't require an awful lot out of you. You can play and relax, and yeah. So I got it. I played it for about an hour and a half that night. The night that I bought it, which was a Friday. Saturday came along, and it was the beginning of my vacation. So I was just like super easy mode. I was just taking it easy. Sunday rolled around. I'm like, yeah. Monday came along, and I was like, oh yeah, Classic comes out tomorrow. And then I found out that evening that it came out on the Monday, and
So the madness began.
Just because of where time zones worked, right? You were a little behind to the party.
I can't remember why they released it on Monday. Because it came out at like 3 p.m. our time, which is mountain time, I guess, for those listening.
Because in the past they always released at the same time. It just changed by time zone, right? So it was no, but let me finish. So it was like they're releasing at 3 o'clock, period. Now, according to which time zone you're in, that's going to mean, they're releasing it at 3 o'clock here, and then an hour later in the next time zone, they're releasing it at 3 o'clock again, and then an hour later in the next time zone.
Yes.
Right? So it's,
and Classic was a global release. So
that's right. Classic released all at once the entire planet over. So at some place it was Tuesday at, 10 a.m., but just here it happened to be Monday at, 8 p.m.
And I will say that the global release strategy, infinitely better. Because it always felt bad when Burning Crusade, Wrath of the Lich King, Cataclysm came out, and it came out for like the EU first, and it was like 12 hours before we got it, kind of thing.
I thought it was the other way around. I thought
however it worked. There was always somebody somewhere that got it before you.
Yeah.
And you're like, it just doesn't feel good.
No, I agree. The flip side of that coin, though, is when you aren't sure how your servers are going to handle that kind of stress. Maybe a staggered release enables you to put the fires out as they come up instead of having the whole thing burn down.
That is true, because Blizzard did have a rather intense opening to their classic game. Which, by the way, is still going strong. Like, I mentioned my own addiction is growing stronger by the day, but like if you log in, all the servers are constantly, when at least in the hours that I play, are all at least medium. There's no low or new population realm. They're all medium, high, or full.
Yeah, they're doing a fantastic job at this point. Their layering technology works a little bit like their phasing technology. I don't really understand the difference between them. Phasing is in default, or not default, the current WoW retail. That's the word I'm looking for. And phasing or layering is in WoW Classic. But
right, and phasing is to handle like lore-related quest differences. So in Cataclysm, when Deathwing destroys everything, there's multiple iterations of each zone where like massive changes happen. So phasing happened when a player completes this Desolace quest or I don't know, Gilneas quest where like half the land gets destroyed, and so the player behind them wouldn't be able to see them, otherwise they'd be floating in midair, basically.
Right.
So that's what phasing is. Layering is when there's like 6 billion players in the starting zone, and there'd be no way to kill any mob, so they layer all these people apart from each other, like by the 100 rather than by the 1,000, and then that way everyone actually can kill something with relative success.
Yeah. Yeah, and to speak to what you were saying before, I just pulled up the game and pulled up the list of servers in the United States, and I see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's 11 servers out of about 40 that are medium population. Everything else is high, with the exception of 3 servers that are absolutely full at this moment.
And that's at 10 p.m. on a Monday. So
Yeah.
it's a work night. It's a school night.
Yeah, exactly. So the game is going strong. I'm loving it. It's beautiful. There's 4 Oceanic realms there in the same situation. There's one in Latin America. It's a medium pop. And then there's one in Brazil, which is low population, if you're interested in that. So
No, it's funny because I played on Earthen Ring, which was always like a medium to high pop realm, mostly medium, and then I went over to Anderhall. Anderhall was always a low pop. We went to Dalaran. Dalaran, I think when we first started there, it was a medium, and then it went down to a low pop. And playing on a high pop realm feels awesome. There's always a lot of people all around me.
Oh, it's definitely very nice. Very, very nice to have people around, because anytime you want to queue up for like a group quest if you play the starting zones in retail, they're like ghost towns. There's nobody around.
And
right?
nobody
So
groups up or anything either because they're all in heirlooms.
Well, yeah, there's nothing really that challenging. But even if like take that aside, if you were to say, hey, I need to kill Hogger, right? You'd maybe one time in 20 asking, you'd get one bite, and you need to put 5 people together to beat that mob. Like it's not an easy task. So you usually end up just passing those quests by, which is really too bad because they give some pretty awesome loot, some pretty badass looking weapons or items or whatever, and it's just too bad that you lose that kind of flavor of the game,
Right?
because you just because of population. Yeah.
What are you going to do next week?
I'm probably going to play quite a bit more WoW Classic. Like you, I seem to be gaining momentum rather than slowing down on it. So I'm loving the game at this point. Probably sunk about 50 hours in it so far, and probably spend a little bit more time playing the Elder Scrolls Blades game on my phone. So I'll be able to report back maybe next week on how that's going. But yeah, those are about the only 2 games I have room for in my life right now. My the 2 mistresses that take me away from my wife and kids. Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. Next week, we are going to be talking about the console wars and the history and where we see things going from today and forward. So if you want to reach us, you can email us at tldrpodcast@gmail.com. Be sure if you want to ask a question, suggest a topic for a future episode, we are open to whatever you guys have to say. This video can be found on youtube.com/tldrpodcast. And finally, you can tweet at us on Twitter at podcasttldr. Remember, podcasts without the T and then TLDR. It kind of mashes up those 2 together. Please remember to like, subscribe, hit the bell if you want to receive notifications for these videos, and share them with your friends. This is a big way how we get more viewers and just expand our influence. If you love this show, show it to your friends. Well, thanks for joining me, Jeff, on this show, this very exciting episode. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Me too.
We're really crushing this thing. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we will see you next time.
See you later.
All right. You had me I was really concerned.
Good. Oh, that is funny. All right. You ready to go?
Still concerned. Even more concerned at this point. You're creepy. You're getting to me.
It's not on purpose. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Are you hearing that?
You really are in a weird place.